Chapter 1: Understanding Laziness, the Science of Inaction. Laziness is often misunderstood. Most people think it is simply a moral failing or a lack of willpower, but science shows that it is far more complex. Human behavior is influenced by a combination of brain chemistry, environmental cues, habits, and social conditioning. To stop being lazy, you first need to understand why your brain encourages inaction and why this tendency is universal. Evolutionary psychology explains that our ancestors survived by conserving energy. In times when food was scarce and predators were abundant, conserving energy was not only practical, it was essential. The brain evolved to favor energy-efficient behaviors, which today manifests as procrastination, avoidance, and sometimes a lack of motivation to pursue meaningful tasks. Modern life, with its abundance of low-effort rewards like social media, streaming services, and instant gratification, amplifies these tendencies. Neuroscience provides another layer of explanation. Studies of the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for planning, self-control, and decision-making, reveal that this area consumes a large amount of energy. When faced with tasks that require sustained mental effort, the brain may signal fatigue or avoidance to protect itself, even if the task is important for long-term goals. Dopamine, a neurotransmitter often associated with pleasure and reward, plays a crucial role in motivation. Low dopamine activity can make even small tasks feel exhausting, while high dopamine activity can make you seek out immediate gratification over delayed rewards. Understanding these mechanisms is essential because it shifts the perspective from self-judgment to strategic problem solving. Sociological research also offers insights into laziness. People are not isolated individuals. They are part of social networks, cultures, and communities that shape their behaviors and attitudes toward productivity. For example, studies show that when individuals are surrounded by peers who value efficiency and goal achievement, they are more likely to be motivated themselves. Conversely, social environments that normalize procrastination or minimal effort reinforce patterns of laziness. This is why changing your environment, both physical and social, is as important as changing your mindset. Habit formation, a central topic in behavioral psychology, provides practical tools to overcome laziness. Habits are automatic behaviors triggered by cues in the environment and reinforced by rewards. When a habit is negative, such as avoiding work, the brain learns to repeat it because the immediate relief it provides feels rewarding. Positive habits, on the other hand, are reinforced when the brain experiences pleasure or satisfaction after completing an action, even if the ultimate goal is long-term. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, emphasizes that small, incremental changes in behavior, repeated consistently, are far more effective than relying on bursts of willpower. Understanding that laziness is often the result of poorly structured habits rather than personal weakness allows you to adopt strategies to restructure your routines. Motivation itself is a misunderstood concept. Research in psychology differentiates between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. Intrinsic motivation comes from internal drives, such as curiosity, purpose, or a sense of mastery, while extrinsic motivation comes from external factors like rewards, recognition, or fear of punishment. Laziness often occurs when the brain does not perceive intrinsic value in a task, or when the extrinsic rewards are either too distant or insufficiently appealing. Designing tasks in a way that aligns with intrinsic motivation, breaking them into achievable steps, finding personal meaning, or linking them to identity dramatically increases the likelihood of action. Procrastination, one of the most common expressions of laziness, is also deeply studied in psychology. It is not a simple failure to manage time, it is an emotional regulation problem. People procrastinate to avoid negative emotions such as anxiety, boredom, or self-doubt. Neuroscientists have found that the limbic system, responsible for emotions, can override the prefrontal cortex, causing individuals to prioritize short-term comfort over long-term goals. This explains why even highly disciplined individuals sometimes delay important tasks. They are not lazy, they are emotionally self-protecting. Practical science-based strategies to counteract this include time blocking, implementation intentions, and the Pomodoro technique, all of which work by reducing the cognitive load required to start a task and by creating structured opportunities for focus. Another critical factor is mindset. Carol Dweck's research on fixed versus growth mindsets shows that people who believe their abilities can improve are more likely to take action and persist in the face of challenges. Conversely, those who see abilities as fixed often avoid effort, fearing failure or judgment. Laziness, in this context, is less a character flaw and more a learned response to past experiences, perceived threats, or low self-efficacy. Understanding this allows you to reframe challenges as opportunities for growth rather than threats, fundamentally altering your approach to effort. Modern productivity literature emphasizes environmental design as a powerful antidote to laziness. By shaping your surroundings to reduce friction for desired behaviors and increase friction for undesired ones, you align your environment with your goals. For example, keeping your workspace clean, reducing distractions, and placing reminders of your objectives in visible locations can significantly increase action. In contrast, environments that facilitate comfort, entertainment, and low-effort behaviors reinforce laziness. The science of habit stacking, environmental cues, and reward substitution are all practical tools derived from behavioral science to override the natural tendency toward inaction. Finally, it is essential to recognize that occasional laziness is normal and adaptive. The goal is not to eliminate it entirely, but to understand it, manage it, and strategically channel energy toward productive actions. By integrating insights from neuroscience, psychology, and sociology, and by leveraging evidence-based techniques for habit formation, motivation, and environmental design, it becomes possible to systematically reduce laziness and increase consistent action. When you grasp why your brain defaults to inaction, you can approach change not with self-criticism, but with curiosity and strategy. Laziness is not a personal failure. It is a signal from your brain, an opportunity to understand your needs, optimize your environment, and build habits that support long-term goals. The next chapters will take these scientific insights and transform them into practical steps to create a life of energy, purpose, and consistent action. Chapter 2. The Psychology of Motivation, Turning Intentions into Action. Motivation is the invisible force that drives humans to act, but it is often misunderstood and mismanaged. Many people believe motivation is a fixed trait or a simple matter of willpower, yet decades of psychological research reveal that it is a dynamic process influenced by internal drives, external environments, and learned behaviors. Motivation is best understood as a cycle. It begins with a desire or goal, moves through planning and anticipation, and culminates in action, which then reinforces or undermines the initial desire. Neuroscientific studies show that the brain's reward system, centered around the neurotransmitter dopamine, plays a critical role in this process. Dopamine is not simply about pleasure, it is about anticipation and the prediction of reward. When the brain expects a positive outcome from an action, dopamine levels rise, creating energy, focus, and drive. However, when tasks seem overwhelming, ambiguous, or unappealing, dopamine levels remain low, and the body experiences a sense of lethargy, making procrastination almost inevitable. Understanding this biological foundation helps explain why motivation fluctuates and why simple exhortations to just do it often fail. Psychologists differentiate between intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, each playing a distinct role in guiding behavior. Intrinsic motivation arises from internal satisfaction, curiosity, and the pursuit of mastery or meaning, while extrinsic motivation is fueled by external rewards such as money, recognition, or avoidance of punishment. Studies indicate that intrinsic motivation leads to higher persistence, creativity, and long-term success, whereas reliance on extrinsic motivators can produce short-term compliance but may erode engagement if the reward disappears. The most effective strategy for overcoming laziness involves cultivating intrinsic motivation by connecting tasks to personal values, sense of purpose, or identity. For example, someone who views himself as a lifelong learner may find joy in studying, even when the work is challenging, whereas an individual focused solely on grades may struggle to engage once external pressure diminishes. Goal-setting theory, developed in organizational psychology, provides a practical framework for transforming motivation into action. Specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-bound, SMART goals create clarity and focus, while breaking larger goals into micro goals reduces cognitive and emotional resistance. When tasks are abstract or distant, the brain perceives them as high cost and low reward, triggering avoidance. By contrast, immediate, achievable steps generate small dopamine releases, reinforcing progress and creating momentum. This is why habit stacking, implementation intentions, and incremental progress are consistently recommended in modern productivity literature. Another essential psychological principle is self-determination theory, which emphasizes autonomy, competence, and relatedness as the three pillars of sustained motivation. Autonomy involves feeling in control of one's actions. Competence is the sense of efficacy and mastery. And relatedness is connection with others who share similar goals or values. When these needs are met, motivation flourishes naturally. Conversely, environments that restrict choice, undermine confidence, or isolate individuals often produce chronic laziness or disengagement. Understanding the emotional dimension of motivation is equally important. Research shows that procrastination and inaction are frequently emotional coping mechanisms rather than indicators of laziness or moral failure. Fear failure, anxiety, or perfectionism can paralyze action, while boredom or lack of interest can sap energy. Strategies such as emotion labeling, mindfulness, and cognitive reappraisal help individuals manage these emotional barriers, enabling them to move from intention to action, even when feelings are uncomfortable. Motivation is also highly context dependent. Behavioral economists and social psychologists demonstrate that humans respond powerfully to environmental clues and social norms. For instance, the mere presence of focused peers can increase an individual's effort, while distracting surroundings or a culture that normalizes delay can reinforce laziness. By designing environments that reduce friction for desired behaviors and increase friction for undesired ones, individuals can leverage their context to support motivation rather than fight against it. Timing and energy management are additional factors. Circadian rhythms influence cognitive performance, energy levels, and emotional regulation throughout the day. Aligning high-effort tasks with peak energy periods, taking regular breaks, and maintaining adequate sleep and nutrition significantly boost motivation and productivity. Ignoring these biological rhythms often leads to unnecessary resistance and perceived laziness. Moreover, cognitive framing and visualization techniques amplify motivation. Studies in sports psychology and behavioral science show that vividly imagining the successful completion of tasks or the benefits of action increases the likelihood of actual follow-through. By mentally rehearsing effort and reward, the brain creates neural pathways that prepare the body and mind for real action, making tasks feel less daunting and more attainable. Social support and accountability also strengthen motivation. Research indicates that individuals who share goals, report progress, or work alongside supportive peers are significantly more likely to sustain effort. This principle underlies strategies like accountability partners, study groups, or public commitments, which create both positive reinforcement and social pressure to act. Motivation is further reinforced by feedback loops. Immediate, tangible feedback on progress, whether through tracking apps, journals, or self-reflection, produces small but consistent dopamine rewards that keep momentum alive. This is why many of the most effective productivity systems emphasize measurement and incremental success rather than relying solely on long-term outcomes. Finally, modern literature on habit, creativity, and productivity converges on one insight. Motivation cannot be forced indefinitely, it must be cultivated strategically. By aligning tasks with intrinsic values, structuring environments for success, managing emotions and energy, and leveraging social and cognitive tools, individuals can transform intentions into consistent action. Laziness is not a character defect. It is a natural signal from the brain that requires understanding, strategy, and support to overcome. Recognizing the psychological principles behind motivation allows you to move beyond guilt and self-criticism towards deliberate, evidence-based strategies that convert desire into achievement. The next chapters will build upon these insights, showing how to structure habits, optimize environments, and harness both biological and social factors to create sustainable productivity and defeat chronic laziness at its roots. Chapter 3: Building Habits That Stick, From Willpower to Automatic Action. Overcoming laziness is not primarily a matter of summoning willpower in bursts, but rather of creating habits that operate automatically, guiding behavior without constant conscious effort. Willpower is a limited resource, and relying on it alone to overcome procrastination and inaction is a recipe for exhaustion and failure. Modern psychology and neuroscience show that habits are the building blocks of sustained productivity because they rewire the brain to perform desired behaviors with minimal cognitive effort. Habits are formed through the interplay of cues, routines, and rewards, a concept known as the habit loop, popularized by Charles Duhigg in The Power of Habit. The cue is a trigger that tells your brain to initiate the behavior. The routine is the behavior itself, and the reward is the positive outcome that reinforces it. Over time, the brain learns to anticipate the reward whenever the cue appears, making the behavior automatic. Understanding this loop is essential for anyone seeking to stop being lazy because it shifts the focus from trying harder to designing smarter behavioral systems. Small, incremental changes are far more effective than attempting to overhaul your entire life at once. Behavioral science emphasizes the principle of atomic habits, where tiny improvements compounded consistently lead to extraordinary results. Instead of attempting to overhaul your entire life at once, you begin by identifying one small, achievable behavior and performing it consistently until it becomes second nature. For example, instead of committing to 2 hours of focused exercise each day immediately, you might start with 5 minutes of movement or one small productive action, gradually increasing as consistency strengthens neural pathways and confidence. Motivation may fluctuate, but habits persist because they rely on automaticity rather than momentary desire. Environment design is critical in building habits that stick. The brain responds powerfully to contextual cues, and reducing friction for desired behaviors while increasing friction for undesired behaviors is a cornerstone of habit formation. Simple strategies include placing workout clothes where they are visible, keeping healthy snacks within reach, reducing distractions in the workspace, and removing temptations such as social media notifications. By aligning your physical environment with your goals, you create a structure in which good habits are the default, and laziness requires conscious effort to maintain. Habit stacking, another evidence-based strategy, involves linking a new habit to an existing routine. For instance, after brushing your teeth in the morning, you might immediately write down 3 priorities for the day or perform a short mindfulness exercise. By anchoring new behaviors to established ones, you leverage the brain's existing neural pathways, making adoption faster and more sustainable. Reward structuring also plays a crucial role. Immediate, tangible rewards strengthen habit loops, whereas delayed or abstract rewards often fail to motivate consistently. For example, tracking progress visually, celebrating small wins, or pairing enjoyable experiences with productive behaviors reinforces the habit before the long-term benefits of effort manifest. Neuroscience supports this approach. Dopamine release is maximized by immediate perceptible reinforcement, helping to counteract the brain's tendency toward inertia. Self-awareness is another key factor. Monitoring behavior through journaling, habit trackers, or digital apps allows individuals to observe patterns, identify triggers for procrastination, and make targeted adjustments. Reflection strengthens the prefrontal cortex, improving planning and self-regulation, and allows you to intervene when habits drift toward undesired behaviors. Importantly, habit formation is also a social process. Studies in sociology and psychology reveal that habits are contagious. People are influenced by the routines and behaviors of those around them. Surrounding yourself with individuals who model consistency, effort, and discipline increases the likelihood that you will adopt similar behaviors. Supportive communities, accountability partners, and collaborative goal setting amplify habit adherence and reduce the burden of self-monitoring alone. Breaking negative habits is equally important in the fight against laziness. Undesired behaviors often provide immediate relief, even if they sabotage long-term goals. Effective strategies for habit elimination include identifying the cue, disrupting the routine, and substituting a positive alternative. For instance, if the habit is mindlessly scrolling on social media when stressed, you might place your phone in another room and replace scrolling with a short walk or deep breathing exercise. This approach addresses the underlying emotional or cognitive triggers rather than relying on sheer willpower, which is unsustainable. Mindset also interacts with habit formation. Individuals with a growth mindset, who see effort as a pathway to mastery, are more likely to persist with challenging behaviors, even when immediate rewards are absent. In contrast, a fixed mindset can undermine habit adoption, as temporary setbacks are interpreted as personal failures rather than learning opportunities. Reinforcing a growth mindset alongside habit strategies increases resilience and long-term adherence. Research and behavioral economics provide additional insight. The brain responds to immediate incentives and penalties more strongly than delayed consequences, a principle known as temporal discounting. To counteract this tendency, it is effective to structure micro-rewards, use commitment devices, or introduce small, immediate penalties for failure to act. For example, a commitment contract with a friend or public accountability can make procrastination socially or financially costly, increasing motivation to follow through. Consistency and patience are central to habit mastery. Neural adaptation takes time, and the brain does not instantly convert effort into automaticity. Studies suggest that forming new behaviors can take anywhere from 3 weeks to several months, depending on complexity and individual differences. During this period, persistence, repetition, and gentle self-compassion are crucial. Lapses are not failure, but opportunities to strengthen resilience and understanding of triggers. Integrating these insights, the path from laziness to consistent action becomes clear. Start small, structure your environment, link habits to existing routines, reward progress immediately, monitor behavior, leverage social influence, disrupt negative patterns, cultivate a growth mindset, and remain patient. Laziness is not eradicated by motivation alone. It is outmaneuvered by thoughtful habit design that harnesses the brain's natural tendencies and aligns them with your goals. When habits become automatic, the mental energy previously devoted to deliberation is freed for higher-level pursuits, creativity, and long-term planning. By systematically applying these principles, you convert willpower into systems, intentions into action, and sporadic effort into sustainable productivity. The next chapter will build on habit formation by exploring how to structure daily routines and environments to maximize focus and energy, translating scientific insights into a practical, actionable lifestyle that leaves laziness behind. Chapter 4: Environmental Mastery: Shaping Your Surroundings for Maximum Productivity. The environment in which you live and work is one of the most powerful, yet often overlooked, determinants of action and productivity. Laziness is rarely caused solely by personal failings. It is frequently reinforced by surroundings that encourage inaction and distract from meaningful tasks. Understanding environmental mastery is about recognizing that your behaviors are strongly influenced by cues, context, and social norms, and that by intentionally shaping these factors, you can drastically reduce resistance to action. Behavioral science reveals that humans are highly cue-driven. The presence of a visual reminder, the accessibility of tools, and even subtle sensory signals can determine whether a habit is enacted or ignored. For example, a cluttered workspace creates cognitive overload, increasing stress and decision fatigue, which in turn encourages avoidance and procrastination. Conversely, a clean, organized environment with clearly visible cues for productive behavior primes the brain to act. Neuroscience supports this by showing that the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and executive function, has limited capacity. Reducing unnecessary cognitive load through environmental design frees mental energy for meaningful effort rather than resisting distractions. Modern productivity literature, such as James Clear's Atomic Habits and Cal Newport's Deep Work, emphasizes the principle of making desirable behaviors easy and undesirable behaviors difficult. This can take the form of removing distractions, like turning off notifications, placing smartphones out of reach, or using website blockers, while simultaneously making productive actions more convenient, such as keeping notebooks, exercise equipment, or healthy snacks in sight and readily available. Environmental mastery also extends to social surroundings. Human behavior is profoundly shaped by social norms and peer influence. Studies in sociology show that being around highly motivated, disciplined individuals increases one's own engagement in productive behaviors, while environments where procrastination or minimal effort is normalized reinforces laziness. By seeking communities, mentors, or workspaces that align with your goals, you harness social reinforcement to support consistent action. Time management and spatial structuring are intertwined with environmental mastery. Research indicates that the physical placement of items, scheduling of work, and spatial separation of tasks influence motivation and performance. For instance, separating spaces for work and relaxation trains the brain to associate specific environments with action or rest, reducing mental conflict and increasing automaticity. Similarly, scheduling tasks during periods of peak energy and minimizing distractions during these windows enhances focus. The principle of friction manipulation is also key. Behaviors that are easy to start are more likely to occur, while those that require extra effort are less frequent. By reducing friction for positive behaviors, such as placing a water bottle where you see it to encourage hydration, or presetting your workspace for writing, you increase the probability of engagement. Conversely, increasing friction for negative behaviors, like placing the television remote in another room or uninstalling distracting apps, decreases automatic indulgence. Psychological triggers such as visual cues and ambient stimuli further shape productivity. Bright lighting, organized surfaces, and minimal clutter signal to the brain that the environment is meant for action. Personalization matters as well. Spaces that reflect your identity, values, or goals can increase emotional investment and intrinsic motivation, making productive behaviors more appealing. Motivation is reinforced when the environment consistently aligns with desired outcomes. Behavioral economics provide additional strategies such as nudges and pre-commitments that capitalize on environmental cues to guide action. For example, placing a calendar with deadlines in a visible location, setting reminders that encourage immediate steps, or pre-committing to a public accountability system leverages the environment to maintain momentum and reduce reliance on fluctuating internal motivation. Environmental mastery also involves managing digital spaces. In today's world, digital clutter, excessive notifications, email overload, and social media feeds constitutes a major source of distraction and mental fatigue. Applying the same principles of organization, friction reduction, and cue management in digital spaces is essential. Structuring devices, apps, and notifications to support priorities rather than undermine them creates a virtual environment conducive to consistent action. Emotional factors intersect with environmental mastery. Spaces that induce stress, discomfort, or negative associations are more likely to provoke avoidance and procrastination. Simple interventions such as incorporating natural light, plants, comfortable seating, or ambient sounds can enhance mood, reduce cognitive load, and promote sustained focus. These seemingly minor adjustments have outsized effects on behavior because the brain continuously responds to sensory input in ways that shape motivation and energy. Habit formation and environment design are inseparable. The environment serves as both trigger and reinforcement for habits. When cues for positive habits are salient and easy to act upon, and cues for negative habits are hidden or inconvenient, behaviors become automatic and require less conscious effort. This reduces the cognitive and emotional burden of action, making laziness less likely. The concept of choice architecture from behavioral economics reinforces this approach. By intentionally designing your environment to make good decisions easier and bad decisions harder, you align the external world with internal goals. This extends beyond physical spaces to routines, schedules, and the sequencing of tasks. By planning the order of activities, creating transition cues, and removing obstacles, you prime yourself to move seamlessly from intention to action. Environmental mastery also includes strategic exposure to motivating stimuli. For example, displaying goal-related images, quotes, or progress charts provides constant reinforcement and reminds the brain of the rewards associated with action. Similarly, joining environments that foster learning, growth, and creativity enhances engagement and sustains effort over time. Social accountability can be embedded into environmental design, creating both encouragement and subtle pressure to act. Despite its power, environmental mastery is not about perfection. Overly rigid or sterile environments can produce resistance, burnout, or anxiety. The goal is to create a supportive structure that nudges action, reduces unnecessary friction, and reinforces habits, while maintaining flexibility and adaptability. Occasional laziness is natural. The environment is meant to guide behavior, not punish it. In summary, environmental mastery transforms the spaces in which you live, work, and interact into allies in the fight against laziness. By leveraging cues, reducing friction, optimizing physical and digital spaces, embedding social reinforcement, and aligning surroundings with intrinsic motivation, you create conditions in which productive behavior becomes automatic and sustainable. Laziness, once a product of chaotic or unsupportive surroundings, loses its grip when the brain is consistently cued, reinforced, and rewarded for action. With strategic environmental design, combined with habit formation, emotional awareness, and social influence, the path from intention to action becomes natural, predictable, and enduring. The next chapter will explore the crucial role of focus, attention, and energy management in productivity, showing how to harness cognitive resources to sustain high performance and overcome the inertia of laziness. Chapter 5: Focus and Energy: Harnessing Your Mental and Physical Resources. Focus and energy are the twin engines of productivity, and their management is critical in the battle against laziness. Understanding how attention and physical vitality interact with motivation allows you to structure your life for sustained action rather than sporadic bursts of effort. Cognitive neuroscience shows that attention is a finite resource, and the brain can only maintain high levels of focus for limited periods before fatigue sets in. This is why multitasking, constant digital interruptions, and unstructured work environments are major contributors to perceived laziness. They disperse attention, reduce efficiency, and increase mental resistance. Deep work, a concept popularized by Cal Newport, emphasizes the deliberate allocation of uninterrupted time blocks for cognitively demanding tasks. When focus is protected and distractions are minimized, the brain enters a state of heightened concentration, producing high-quality output and a sense of flow. Flow, as described by psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, is a state in which time seems to disappear, effort feels effortless, and motivation is intrinsic. Achieving flow requires balancing challenge with skill level, eliminating distractions, and creating clear goals. When these conditions are met, energy is optimized and laziness is naturally reduced. Energy management extends beyond mental focus to physical resources. Neuroscience and physiology show that sleep, nutrition, and exercise profoundly impact cognitive performance, emotional regulation, and motivation. Chronic sleep deprivation reduces prefrontal cortex function, increases irritability, and diminishes the capacity to sustain attention, making procrastination and avoidance more likely. Adequate sleep, balanced nutrition, and regular physical activity enhance dopamine function, regulate stress hormones, and improve the brain's ability to engage in sustained effort. Beyond baseline physical energy, strategic energy management includes pacing, breaks, and recovery. The Pomodoro technique, which alternates focus work periods with short breaks, leverages the brain's natural rhythms to maintain high levels of attention without burnout. Similarly, periodic longer breaks, mindfulness practices, or light physical activity can restore energy, improve clarity, and reduce mental resistance, allowing action to continue consistently. Attention management is equally critical in the digital age. Studies in cognitive psychology show that frequent task switching depletes mental resources and increases perceived effort. By batching similar tasks, scheduling uninterrupted work periods, and controlling notifications, you reduce cognitive load and make it easier to initiate and sustain productive behavior. Cognitive strategies, such as prioritization, planning, and visualization, further enhance focus. Structuring tasks from most to least important, creating concrete action steps, and visualizing successful completion help the brain allocate resources efficiently, reduce anxiety, and maintain momentum. Emotional energy also interact with focus. Negative emotions, such as fear, frustration, or boredom, consume cognitive capacity and undermine attention. Mindfulness, cognitive reframing, and gratitude practices are effective tools for regulating emotional energy, allowing the brain to direct more resources toward action. Motivation, focus, and energy are mutually reinforcing. When energy is high, attention is sharp, and motivation is aligned, tasks are easier to initiate and complete. Conversely, low energy amplifies distraction, weakens focus, and increases susceptibility to procrastination. Therefore, strategies to maintain physical and mental energy are not optional. They are essential components of defeating laziness. Environmental factors, as discussed in the previous chapter, directly impact focus and energy. A workspace designed for minimal distraction, optimal lighting, comfortable ergonomics, and visible cues for action reduces cognitive load and preserves attention. Similarly, social environments that encourage engagement and accountability sustain both mental and emotional energy, making effort more automatic. Habit formation and energy management are intertwined. Automatic behaviors reduce the mental effort required to act, freeing cognitive resources for more demanding tasks. By structuring routines to align with energy peaks and habitual action, you minimize reliance on willpower and maximize productive output. Time of day optimization is another powerful technique. Chronobiology shows that individuals have natural variations in alertness and energy across the day. Scheduling high focus, high effort tasks during peak alertness periods and reserving low energy periods for routine or creative tasks can dramatically increase efficiency and reduce the perception of laziness. Nutrition and hydration also influence focus and energy. Stable blood sugar levels, adequate protein intake, and regular hydration support sustained attention and mood regulation, while highly processed foods, sugar spikes, and dehydration can induce lethargy, irritability, and mental fog, all of which reinforce avoidance behaviors. Emotional alignment with tasks is equally important. The brain prioritizes actions connected to intrinsic motivation or meaningful outcomes. When energy is low, tasks that lack immediate relevance feel disproportionately effortful. Connecting daily actions to purpose, values, or identity increases intrinsic engagement, making sustained effort feel natural rather than forced. Recovery and reflection are additional components of energy mastery. Chronic overexertion without rest leads to burnout, decreased motivation, and increased susceptibility to laziness. Regular reflection, journaling, or meditation allows the brain to consolidate learning, process experiences, and replenish mental and emotional reserves. By treating focus and energy as resources to manage strategically rather than unlimited reserves to burn, you reduce reliance on willpower and create a sustainable system for action. In practice, defeating laziness through focus and energy management involves a multi-layered approach, protecting attention through structured work periods, aligning tasks with energy peaks, maintaining physical health, reducing distractions, regulating emotions, and linking effort to intrinsic motivation. Each component reinforces the others. Physical energy supports mental focus. Focus amplifies motivation, and motivation enhances persistence. Laziness is no longer an abstract enemy, but a signal of depleted cognitive, emotional, or physical resources, offering an opportunity to adjust routines, environment, and habits strategically. By mastering focus and energy, you convert potential inertia into consistent action, maximize productivity, and create the mental and physical conditions necessary for sustained effort. Chapter 6: Overcoming Procrastination: Strategies to Act Now. Procrastination is the most visible form of laziness, yet it is not a moral failing or a sign of weakness. It is an emotional and cognitive response to perceived difficulty, fear, or discomfort. Understanding the mechanisms behind procrastination is essential to overcoming it, because once the underlying causes are addressed, consistent action becomes possible. Cognitive psychology reveals that procrastination is often an emotional regulation problem rather than a time management issue. When faced with a task that provokes anxiety, boredom, or self-doubt, the brain prioritizes short-term emotional comfort over long-term goals. The limbic system, which governs emotions, can override the prefrontal cortex, responsible for planning and self-control, leading to avoidance. This explains why even highly disciplined individuals sometimes delay important tasks. They are responding to emotional signals rather than laziness. To combat procrastination, it is necessary to restructure the way tasks are approached, reduce psychological barriers, and create systems that make action immediate and rewarding. One effective method is the 2-minute rule, popularized by productivity experts, which states that any task that can be started in 2 minutes should be done immediately. The principle is simple. Beginning a task, even briefly, triggers momentum, reduces resistance, and activates dopamine pathways associated with reward and accomplishment. Once a task is initiated, continuation becomes far easier, and what initially seemed overwhelming is reframed as achievable. Another powerful strategy is time blocking, in which specific periods are allocated for specific tasks. By committing to start and finish within a defined window, the brain perceives a clear structure, reducing decision fatigue and emotional avoidance. Coupled with the Pomodoro technique, which alternates focused work with brief breaks, time blocking enhances concentration, preserves energy, and makes sustained action more manageable. Breaking large tasks into micro steps is also critical. When a task appears monumental, the brain interprets it as high cost and low reward, increasing resistance. By dividing work into small, clearly defined steps, each completed action provides a sense of progress in immediate reinforcement, creating a positive feedback loop that counters procrastination. Visualization and mental rehearsal complement this approach. Psychologists and behavioral scientists have shown that vividly imagining the process of completing a task, rather than only the end result, increases the likelihood of action. This technique primes the brain for effort, reduces anticipatory anxiety, and aligns attention with achievable, immediate steps. Emotional awareness is equally important. Procrastination is frequently a coping mechanism for negative emotions such as fear of failure, perfectionism, or self-doubt. Mindfulness practices, cognitive reframing, and emotion labeling allow individuals to recognize, accept, and regulate these feelings, preventing them from dictating behavior. By addressing the emotional trigger directly, action becomes possible even when discomfort is present. Environmental cues are another key factor in overcoming procrastination. Research shows that humans respond strongly to contextual triggers, and modifying surroundings can significantly reduce avoidance. Removing distractions, organizing workspaces, and making tools and resources readily accessible lowers the activation energy required to start tasks. Similarly, placing reminders, visual prompts, or progress trackers in prominent locations reinforces commitment and provides ongoing feedback. Social accountability is a powerful motivator. Studies indicate that individuals are more likely to act when their progress is observable by others due to both encouragement and subtle social pressure. Accountability partners, study groups, or public commitments create an external layer of motivation that complements internal drives, reducing the likelihood of delay. Reward structuring further supports immediate action. The brain prioritizes behaviors that provide timely and tangible reinforcement. By linking task completion to immediate rewards, such as small breaks, treats, or social acknowledgement, the habit loop is strengthened, making future engagement more automatic. Conversely, delaying gratification without any intermediate reinforcement often exacerbates procrastination. Cognitive restructuring also plays a vital role. By reframing tasks as opportunities for growth, learning, or self-expression, rather than threats or obligations, the brain experiences increased intrinsic motivation. This reduces emotional resistance and transforms effortful actions into meaningful endeavors. Self-compassion is equally important. Many individuals procrastinate because they fear judgment or perceive themselves as lazy. Guilt and self-criticism amplifies stress and avoidance. Practicing self-compassion allows individuals to acknowledge delays without emotional overload, fostering a mindset in which effort can resume without paralyzing shame. Strategic commitment devices help bridge the gap between intention and action. Behavioral economists have demonstrated that pre-commitment to future behavior, such as scheduling tasks with deadlines, financial stakes, or social obligations, effectively reduces procrastination. These devices alter the cost-benefit analysis in the brain, making immediate action more appealing than continued avoidance. Habits and procrastination are closely linked. Automatic behaviors reduce reliance on motivation and willpower, which fluctuate and can fail under stress. By embedding productive behaviors into routines and cue-driven systems, procrastination is minimized because action becomes the default rather than the exception. Energy and focus, covered in previous chapters, are also essential. Tasks are more likely to be delayed when mental or physical energy is low. Aligning difficult or high-effort work with periods of peak alertness, ensuring proper rest, and managing stress reduces the likelihood that procrastination will occur. Tracking progress and reflecting on outcomes reinforce accountability and learning. Observing patterns of delay, identifying triggers, and celebrating small successes create a feedback loop that strengthens habits, reduces avoidance, and builds confidence. In essence, procrastination is a multidimensional problem involving emotional, cognitive, social, and environmental factors. Overcoming it requires a comprehensive, science-backed approach. Start tasks immediately using micro-actions, structure time to minimize decision fatigue, optimize environments to reduce friction, leverage social and accountability systems, reward progress consistently, regulate emotions, and cultivate self-compassion. Laziness is no longer an abstract barrier. It is a set of predictable responses that can be anticipated, managed, and redirected into consistent action. By implementing these strategies, intentions are transformed into behavior, delays are reduced, and productivity becomes sustainable. The next chapter will focus on cultivating intrinsic motivation and purpose, demonstrating how connecting daily actions to meaningful goals strengthens effort, reduces reliance on external pressure, and permanently diminishes the grip of laziness. Chapter 7: Purpose and Drive, Turning Meaning into Momentum. Purpose is the ultimate antidote to laziness, providing the deep-seated drive that transforms mundane effort into sustained action. While habits, environmental design, and motivation techniques are powerful tools, they're most effective when aligned with a meaningful why. Psychology, sociology, and behavioral science all point to the same conclusion. Humans are wired to act when they perceive a connection between their efforts and personal significance. Viktor Frankl, in his seminal work, Man's Search for Meaning, demonstrated that even in extreme adversity, individuals can find motivation to endure and act when their behavior is anchored in purpose. In everyday life, purpose functions similarly, giving the brain a compelling reason to overcome inertia, resist distractions, and sustain effort in the face of fatigue or boredom. Neuroscience explains this effect. The brain's reward and motivation pathways respond not only to immediate pleasure, but also to signals of value, relevance, and long-term significance. When tasks are tied to personal meaning, dopamine is released in anticipation of the reward, attention is sharpened, and the prefrontal cortex is more engaged, enabling planning and sustained action. Conversely, tasks perceived as meaningless fail to activate these circuits effectively, making procrastination and avoidance more likely. Purpose operates on multiple levels. On a personal level, it can be linked to values, identity, or self-improvement. For example, someone who sees themselves as a lifelong learner will persist in studying even when difficult or tedious, because the activity reinforces identity and growth. On a social level, purpose can emerge from contributing to family, community, or societal goals, which taps into humans' inherent need for relatedness, a key factor in self-determination theory. Aligning daily actions with long-term goals creates a coherent narrative that motivates persistent effort. Developing purpose begins with self-reflection and clarity, understanding what truly matters, identifying personal strengths, passions, and values, and articulating long-term aspirations allows for the creation of intentional goals that resonate intrinsically. Without this alignment, effort feels arbitrary and laziness can easily take hold. Behavioral science suggests strategies for embedding purpose into action. Visualization, goal mapping, and journaling are effective tools for translating abstract purpose into concrete, achievable steps. By linking each small action to a broader, meaningful goal, the brain perceives immediate significance, activating motivation and reinforcing habit formation. Purpose also enhances resilience. Psychological research shows that individuals with a clear sense of purpose are better able to withstand stress, recover from setbacks, and maintain effort under challenging conditions. When tasks are framed as steps toward a meaningful objective, obstacles are interpreted as opportunities for growth rather than threats, reducing the emotional triggers that often lead to procrastination. Social and cultural factors amplify the power of purpose. Humans are deeply influenced by community, tradition, and shared goals. Participating in environments that value effort, growth, and contribution strengthens individual commitment. Mentorship, collaboration, and public accountability reinforce purpose as the individual's actions are recognized, supported, and tied to collective meaning. Purpose is not static. It evolves with experience, learning, and reflection. Regular assessment of goals, values, and achievements ensures alignment between daily actions and overarching aspirations. This dynamic approach prevents stagnation and ensures that effort remains motivating rather than mechanical. Integrating purpose into routine also enhances habit formation. When habits are linked to personally meaningful outcomes, their reinforcement is more robust, automaticity is strengthened, and reliance on willpower decreases. For instance, exercising becomes more than a physical task when connected to health, longevity, or personal identity, making consistent effort easier and more satisfying. Motivation research underscores the role of autonomy, competence, and relatedness in sustaining purpose-driven action. Autonomy allows individuals to choose how they pursue meaningful goals. Competence builds confidence through mastery, and relatedness ties effort to social or communal impact. Together, these elements create a fertile environment for overcoming laziness because tasks are intrinsically rewarding, socially reinforced, and aligned with self-identity. Psychological techniques for maintaining purpose include framing, reframing, and narrative building. Framing tasks as steps in a larger story of growth or contribution transforms mundane or challenging work into meaningful activity. Reframing failures as feedback or learning opportunities preserves motivation and reduces avoidance. Narrative building, seeing your life as a coherent story of progress, creates continuity, coherence, and a sense of personal agency, which are all powerful antidotes to laziness. Purpose also intersects with long-term planning and foresight. Humans are naturally present-focused, which makes short-term rewards disproportionately motivating. Linking immediate actions to distant, meaningful outcomes helps overcome this bias. Techniques like visualization of future success, planning backward from goals, and creating concrete micro-goals ensure that the brain perceives ongoing relevance and reward, sustaining effort even when delayed gratification is required. Emotional alignment enhances the effect of purpose. When daily actions evoke positive emotions or reinforce identity, the brain's reward circuits are engaged, reinforcing engagement and persistence. Conversely, activities perceived as disconnected from values or identity are more likely to be delayed or avoided. Thus, purpose acts as both a cognitive and emotional anchor, transforming effort from a chore into a source of fulfillment. In practical terms, overcoming laziness through purpose involves clarifying values and long-term goals, linking daily actions to meaningful outcomes, visualizing progress, embedding habits into the narrative of personal growth, leveraging social reinforcement, and regularly reassessing alignment. Laziness is reframed not as personal weakness, but as a misalignment between actions and meaning. By anchoring behavior in purpose, you create a natural, self-sustaining source of drive that propels consistent effort, reduces procrastination, and enhances satisfaction. Purpose turns motivation into momentum, transforming energy, focus, and habit into a coherent, goal-directed system. The next chapter will explore self-discipline and mental resilience, showing how to maintain consistent effort when challenges arise and how to reinforce the strategies developed in previous chapters to permanently diminish laziness. Chapter 8: Self-Discipline and Mental Resilience, Staying Strong When Motivation Wavers. Even with clear purpose, optimized habits, and an ideal environment, there will be times when motivation falters and laziness tempts action or inaction. Self-discipline and mental resilience are the buffers that allow individuals to persist when internal drives are low and external conditions are challenging. Psychology defines self-discipline as the ability to regulate impulses, maintain focus, and persist toward long-term goals despite short-term discomfort. Neuroscience shows that self-discipline is largely a function of the prefrontal cortex, the brain region responsible for executive function, planning, and impulse control. While willpower alone is limited and can be depleted, self-discipline is not simply about resisting temptation. It is about creating systems, routines, and mental strategies that reduce reliance on moment-to-moment motivation. Mental resilience complements self-discipline by providing the capacity to recover quickly from setbacks, adapt to challenges, and maintain consistent effort under stress. Research in positive psychology demonstrates that resilient individuals experience setbacks as learning opportunities rather than threats, which prevents emotional disruption from translating into procrastination or inaction. Developing self-discipline begins with understanding and managing impulses. Temptation is a natural part of human behavior, and the brain continuously weighs immediate rewards against long-term benefits. One effective strategy is delay and substitution. When an urge arises to engage in low-value behavior, delay the response and substitute a constructive action. For example, when tempted to scroll social media, take a brief walk, perform a micro task, or engage in mindful breathing. Over time, this trains the brain to associate discomfort with positive action rather than avoidance. Environmental scaffolding reinforces self discipline. By structuring spaces and routines to make desirable behaviors easy and undesirable behaviors difficult, the need for raw willpower is minimized. Placing obstacles in the path of distractions, such as removing devices or limiting access to non essential apps, creates a natural barrier to laziness. Simultaneously, making productive actions visible, convenient, and immediately rewarding strengthens the neural pathways that support disciplined behavior. Goal segmentation is another crucial tool. Large, complex tasks can overwhelm cognitive resources and provoke avoidance. By breaking goals into smaller, clearly defined actions with measurable outcomes, the brain experiences frequent reinforcement, making persistence manageable and self discipline sustainable. Neuroscience confirms that micro goals release dopamine incrementally, reinforcing the habit loop and building momentum even when broader motivation is low. Cognitive reframing enhances both resilience and discipline. Individuals who perceive challenges as opportunities for growth are less likely to succumb to discouragement or procrastination. Techniques such as thought labeling, positive self talk, and visualization help transform perceived obstacles into manageable tasks, reducing emotional resistance and enabling steady progress. Emotional regulation is deeply intertwined with self discipline. Stress, frustration, and fatigue are major contributors to inaction as they consume cognitive resources and diminish focus. Mindfulness practices, meditation, and controlled breathing strengthen prefrontal cortex activity, enabling better decision making and sustained effort even under pressure. In addition, resilience is reinforced through adaptive coping strategies. Individuals who maintain perspective, embrace incremental progress, and accept temporary discomfort are better able to continue action when motivation wanes. Social support amplifies these effects. Accountability partners, mentors, or supportive communities provide encouragement, feedback, and subtle social pressure, all of which bolster both self discipline and resilience. Behavioral economics offers further insight through commitment devices. Pre-committing to specific actions, setting deadlines, or introducing stakes for inaction reduces the cognitive load associated with decision-making and strengthens adherence to long-term goals. This approach makes disciplined behavior more automatic and less vulnerable to fluctuating internal states. Habit integration is a cornerstone of sustained self-discipline. When productive behaviors are embedded into daily routines, they rely less on conscious decision making and more on automaticity. For example, performing a morning planning session followed by a period of focused work and ending with reflection becomes a sequence that reinforces discipline through repetition. Energy management, discussed in previous chapters, underpins resilience and discipline. Physical factors such as sleep, nutrition, and exercise directly influence cognitive function, emotional stability, and impulse control. Mental fatigue and low energy significantly increase susceptibility to laziness, making the maintenance of physical health a non negotiable aspect of disciplined action. Self discipline also benefits from perspective on long term consequences. Awareness of delayed gratification and the compounding effects of consistent effort strengthen commitment to action even when immediate rewards are absent. Visualization of future success, journaling progress, and reflecting on past achievements anchor behavior in tangible outcomes, reducing susceptibility to short term temptations. Importantly, self discipline is not about rigidity or perfectionism, it is about strategic effort and adaptability. Overly strict approaches can lead to burnout, while flexible systems that accommodate setbacks, celebrate small wins, and allow recovery maintain sustainable productivity. Resilience is cultivated through iterative practice. Each challenge faced, setback overcome, or moment of persistence reinforces neural pathways associated with disciplined behavior. Over time, this creates a durable capacity to maintain action, reducing the frequency and intensity of laziness when motivation fluctuates. This chapter lays the foundation to the next stage, mastering time and productivity techniques to create a daily life that naturally supports effort, reduces friction, and permanently diminishes laziness through structured, science-backed systems. Chapter 10: Integration and Lifelong Productivity, Creating a System that Eradicates Laziness. By this stage, you have explored habits, environment, energy, focus, purpose, self-discipline, and time mastery, each a pillar in the fight against laziness. The ultimate goal is to integrate these elements into a cohesive, sustainable system that transforms intention into consistent action, reduces mental friction, and allows productivity to become automatic rather than forced. Integration begins with alignment. Each component, habit formation, environmental design, energy management, focus, purpose, self-discipline, and structured time, must support the others rather than exist in isolation. Habits are strengthened when the environment cues them, when energy is sufficient to perform them, and when the tasks align with meaningful goals. Purpose reinforces motivation, which sustains focus and discipline, while time mastery ensures that effort is distributed efficiently throughout the day. The creation of a holistic productivity system relies on deliberate design. First, identify your core values and long-term goals, which act as the guiding compass for every decision, habit, and routine. Understanding why you act ensures that effort is meaningful and sustainable, and it converts abstract intentions into actionable steps. With purpose defined, establish keystone habits, small, high-impact behaviors that naturally trigger a cascade of productive actions. For example, a daily planning session can enhance focus, reduce decision fatigue, and create momentum for work, exercise, and learning. These keystone habits serve as anchors around which other routines and behaviors are structured. Environment design is the second layer of integration. Optimize physical spaces, digital environments, and social surroundings to minimize friction for productive behaviors and increase resistance to distraction or avoidance. Keep tools, resources, and cues for action visible and accessible while removing elements that encourage procrastination. Environment shapes behavior passively, allowing your system to function automatically even when motivation wanes. Energy and focus management are the third layer. Align high-effort tasks with natural peaks in cognitive and physical energy. Incorporate breaks, movement, nutrition, hydration, and restorative practices to maintain consistent performance. Recognize that fatigue and distraction are natural signals. A resilient system adapts rather than forcing action at the cost of burnout. Self-discipline and mental resilience form the fourth layer, acting as safety nets for moments when habits, environment, or energy are insufficient. By cultivating emotional regulation, impulse control, and adaptive coping strategies, you ensure that challenges, stress, or temporary lapses do not derail progress. The system is designed to anticipate these moments and provide strategies for recovery. Time mastery integrates all layers into daily execution. Prioritize high-impact tasks, batch similar activities, sequence challenges to coincide with peak energy, and schedule breaks and reflection periods. Flexibility within the structure allows adaptation to unforeseen circumstances without sacrificing productivity. Social structures further reinforce the system. Accountability partners, supportive communities, and collaborative networks provide feedback, motivation, and reinforcement. Humans are inherently influenced by the behaviors and expectations of others, and social integration ensures that your system is embedded in a broader context of shared effort and encouragement. Measurement and reflection are the final elements. Track habits, progress, and energy patterns to identify bottlenecks, refine routines, and celebrate successes. Reflection consolidates learning, strengthens purpose, and ensures that the system evolves with your changing goals, energy levels, and circumstances. Integration is an iterative process. The first version of your productivity system will require testing, adjustment, and adaptation. Begin small, layering components gradually, and observe the interactions between habits, environment, energy, focus, and time. Minor adjustments compound over time, leading to dramatic improvements in consistency and output. Psychological research supports this incremental approach. The brain is more likely to adopt behaviors that are easy, reinforced, and meaningful. Systems that reduce reliance on willpower and motivation, provide immediate feedback, and align with intrinsic goals are the most effective for sustained action. Laziness is not eliminated overnight. It is gradually eroded as the system takes over, converting effort into structured, predictable, and rewarding behavior. Maintenance of the system requires ongoing awareness and adjustment. Life circumstances change, energy levels fluctuate, and goals evolve. Periodic review, reflection, and realignment ensure that habits, environment, routines, and purpose remain coherent and mutually reinforcing. The system must be flexible enough to accommodate change while preserving core principles. Integration also includes the conscious handling of setbacks. Temporary lapses, procrastination, or energy dips are inevitable. A robust system does not punish failure, but provides strategies for recovery, ensuring momentum resumes quickly. This includes environmental cues, micro actions, reflection, and realignment. Over time, the system internalizes itself. Habits become automatic, focus is sustained with minimal effort, routines are second nature, and productive behavior is the default response to cues and opportunities. Energy and resilience are managed proactively, reducing the likelihood that laziness will gain a foothold. By connecting each chapter's principles into a cohesive framework, the individual achieves mastery over behavior, transforming potential into consistent action. Habits provide structure, environment provides cues, energy and focus provide resources, purpose provides motivation, self-discipline ensures persistence, and time mastery organizes execution. Together, they form a self-reinforcing ecosystem in which laziness is systematically reduced and high performance becomes sustainable. The final step is internalization, embracing the system as a natural part of life rather than a set of imposed rules. When behaviors, routines, and environments align with identity and purpose, action requires less conscious effort, willpower is preserved, and productivity becomes an enduring trait rather than a temporary state. Lifelong productivity is achieved not through heroic effort, but through intelligent system design. Laziness is replaced by structure, motivation, and automaticity, while personal growth, achievement, and satisfaction are consistently reinforced. This chapter concludes the journey from understanding laziness to mastering the practical, science-based strategies that permanently diminish its influence. By integrating habits, environment, energy, focus, purpose, self-discipline, and time mastery into a unified system, you create a life in which consistent action is natural, obstacles are manageable, and personal and professional goals are continuously realized. Chapter 10. Integration and Lifelong Productivity, Creating a System that Eradicates Laziness. By this stage, you have explored habits, environment, energy, focus, purpose, self-discipline, and time mastery, each a pillar in the fight against laziness. The ultimate goal is to integrate these elements into a cohesive, sustainable system that transforms intention into consistent action, reduces mental friction, and allows productivity to become automatic rather than forced. Integration begins with alignment. Each component, habit formation, environmental design, energy management, focus, purpose, self-discipline, and structured time, must support the others rather than exist in isolation. Habits are strengthened when the environment cues them, when energy is sufficient to perform them, and when the tasks align with meaningful goals. Purpose reinforces motivation, which sustains focus and discipline, while time mastery ensures that effort is distributed efficiently throughout the day. The creation of a holistic productivity system relies on deliberate design. First, identify your core values and long-term goals, which act as the guiding compass for every decision, habit, and routine. Understanding why you act ensures that effort is meaningful and sustainable, and it converts abstract intentions into actionable steps. With purpose defined, establish keystone habits, small, high impact behaviors that naturally trigger a cascade of productive actions. For example, a daily planning session can enhance focus, reduce decision fatigue, and create momentum for work, exercise, and learning. These keystone habits serve as anchors around which other routines and behaviors are structured. Environment design is the second layer of integration. Optimize physical spaces, digital environments, and social surroundings to minimize friction for productive behaviors and increase resistance to distraction or avoidance. Keep tools, resources, and cues for action visible and accessible while removing elements that encourage procrastination. Environment shapes behavior passively, allowing your system to function automatically even when motivation wanes. Energy and focus management are the third layer. Align high-effort tasks with natural peaks in cognitive and physical energy. Incorporate breaks, movement, nutrition, hydration, and restorative practices to maintain consistent performance. Recognize that fatigue and distraction are natural signals. A resilient system adapts rather than forcing action at the cost of burnout. Self-discipline and mental resilience form the fourth layer, acting as safety nets for moments when habits, environment, or energy are insufficient. By cultivating emotional regulation, impulse control, and adaptive coping strategies, you ensure that challenges, stress, or temporary lapses do not derail progress. The system is designed to anticipate these moments and provide strategies for recovery. Time mastery integrates all layers into daily execution. Prioritize high-impact tasks, batch similar activities, sequence challenges to coincide with peak energy, and schedule breaks and reflection periods. Flexibility within the structure allows adaptation to unforeseen circumstances without sacrificing productivity. Social structures further reinforce the system. Accountability partners, supportive communities, and collaborative networks provide feedback, motivation, and reinforcement. Humans are inherently influenced by the behaviors and expectations of others, and social integration ensures that your system is embedded in a broader context of shared effort and encouragement. Measurement and reflection are the final elements. Track habits, progress, and energy patterns to identify bottlenecks, refine routines, and celebrate successes. Reflection consolidates learning, strengthens purpose, and ensures that the system evolves with your changing goals, energy levels, and circumstances. Integration is an iterative process. The first version of your productivity system will require testing, adjustment, and adaptation. Begin small, layering components gradually, and observe the interactions between habits, environment, energy, focus, and time. Minor adjustments compound over time, leading to dramatic improvements in consistency and output. Psychological research supports this incremental approach. The brain is more likely to adopt behaviors that are easy, reinforced, and meaningful. Systems that reduce reliance on willpower and motivation, provide immediate feedback, and align with intrinsic goals are the most effective for sustained action. Laziness is not eliminated overnight. It is gradually eroded as the system takes over, converting effort into structured, predictable, and rewarding behavior. Maintenance of the system requires ongoing awareness and adjustment. Life circumstances change, energy levels fluctuate, and goals evolve. Periodic review, reflection, and realignment ensure that habits, environment, routines, and purpose remain coherent and mutually reinforcing. The system must be flexible enough to accommodate change while preserving core principles. Integration also includes the conscious handling of setbacks. Temporary lapses, procrastination, or energy dips are inevitable. A robust system does not punish failure, but provides strategies for recovery, ensuring momentum resumes quickly. This includes environmental cues, micro actions, reflection, and realignment. Over time, the system internalizes itself. Habits become automatic, focus is sustained with minimal effort, routines are second nature, and productive behavior is the default response to cues and opportunities. Energy and resilience are managed proactively, reducing the likelihood that laziness will gain a foothold. By connecting each chapter's principles into a cohesive framework, the individual achieves mastery over behavior, transforming potential into consistent action. Habits provide structure, environment provides cues, energy and focus provide resources, purpose provides motivation, self-discipline ensures persistence, and time mastery organizes execution. Together, they form a self-reinforcing ecosystem in which laziness is systematically reduced and high performance becomes sustainable. The final step is internalization, embracing the system as a natural part of life rather than a set of imposed rules. When behaviors, routines, and environments align with identity and purpose, action requires less conscious effort, willpower is preserved, and productivity becomes an enduring trait rather than a temporary state. Lifelong productivity is achieved not through heroic effort, but through intelligent system design. Laziness is replaced by structure, motivation, and automaticity, while personal growth, achievement, and satisfaction are consistently reinforced. This chapter concludes the journey from understanding laziness to mastering the practical, science-based strategies that permanently diminish its influence. By integrating habits, environment, energy, focus, purpose, self-discipline, and time mastery into a unified system, you create a life in which consistent action is natural, obstacles are manageable, and personal and professional goals are continuously realized.